Thanks.
You're gonna start letting them all in.
So
They're
are we
coming.
welcoming? Okay. All right. Well, I will get started in a minute when this plane overhead lands. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Greetings, everyone. Good afternoon, some of you. Good evening to others. Hello, friends, neighbors, supporters of the Gray Panthers NYC. Welcome once again to our Transformation Tuesday series, which Gray Panthers has hosted on the final Tuesday of the month since 2021. As you know, I'm Michelle Arnaud. I'm leading the New York City chapter. And on behalf of our board, I want to thank everybody for your support for the Gray Panthers movement, which was founded in 1970, as you know, by Maggie Kuhn, our fearless founder, who famously reminded us to speak up, although our voices may shake. So before I introduce our distinguished guest, I want to offer you two easy calls to action so that we can raise our collective voice today. First of all, our partners at Justice in Aging have urged us to send a message to Congress today, which simply states no cuts to Medicaid. So you can call 866-426-2631. Don't worry, I'll put it in the chat. At the prompt, state your zip code. You will be connected to your member of Congress and have the opportunity to record this message. No Medicaid cuts. So as you know, any Medicaid cut will take away health and long-term care from older adults, people with disabilities, and their caregivers. Also, secondly, I spoke with Senator Gillibrand's office today, and they shared a hotline that New Yorkers can call to register your opinions and give them feedback. And as you know, she's the ranking member on the Special Committee on Aging. Now that number is 212-688-6262. You can leave the same message as above, no Medicaid cuts, no Medicare cuts, or you can elaborate on any issue that is currently bothering you. Her staff is indexing all calls so she can understand what the constituents are facing. So don't worry, I'll put all the numbers in the chat. As you know, we strive to live up to the mission that was set up by Maggie to combat ageism and to promote intergenerational contact, which is our intention today. And with these programs, we provide a safe space to change the narrative for how ageism impacts our daily life. Remember, all our webinars are recorded and you can find them free on our website, gpnyc.org, posted by our wonderful, responsible, creative tech manager, Emily Trask. So feel free to listen to any of the past webinars. Today, we're honored to have a program that celebrates age, and our presenter, Jack York, is a pioneer in the field of technology and aging. He co-founded It's Never Too Late, a company dedicated to helping older adults realize the full benefits of engagement technology. With a long background in the Silicon Valley, he saw a vast potential in utilizing technology to foster connections. And as a result, in 1999, he started this company and it's evolved into a national leader with 4,000 communities in the US and Canada. Wow, utilizing this technology. In 2022, he launched Tailgate, a company that integrates on-site celebrations at senior living communities with the ability to capture life stories. And today he's going to share some of these stories with us. So now I'll hand the mic over to Carrie Leljadal, who connected us with Jack York. Thanks, Carrie.
Hi, everyone. So Jack and I are together, which is very unusual for any of our Transformation Tuesdays. We are in St. Louis, Missouri at a summit for the Einstein option. We have 36 people here with us working to try to bring the Einstein to fruition. And I had asked Jack to do this before we picked a date for the summit. So we're just doing double duty today. So Jack travels around the country interviewing people and making these wonderful, beautiful recordings that their families can have afterwards. The homes they live in can use them, and they're hysterically funny, most of them. But it's getting to listen to people that are 100 years old and hear what their honest answers are to his questions, because at their age, they don't care anymore, which is great. They're very honest and open, and it's a great way to live. And I think we should all be able to live this way and be able to hear it. So here's my friend Jack.
We're so used to Zoom calls. It's funny to be like next to somebody for something like this. But it is no, I mean it's always funny hearing yourself on a biography because it sounds so serious. I really the last 26 years has been a real just kind of a joyride for me that we started this company called IN2L, really just from a simple observation that most of the activity programming in senior living communities, it was just very condescending, that these people were teachers and welders and lawyers and whatever it may be, and yet they were treated, with no ill intention from incredible activity directors and therapists and such. But we just started a company to try to bring the technology world to these folks that frankly they invented it. So it just felt kind of logical to do that, and it took many years for it to get traction, but ultimately it did, and we're super proud. Now it's under the umbrella of a company called LifeLoop, and I'm happy to still be a part of it. But my real passion has become what I'm doing for Tailgate, and that is really just in actually a variety of different ways, just elevate aging through capturing the stories of the people that are the greatest generation. So I can just, I don't know, Carrie, if you want to ask me questions, you want me to just ramble?
Well,
You tell me what.
Show the first little video.
Yeah, well, I'll tee it up. I'll tee it up a little bit, and then Emily should show the video. Is that what we do really cool documentaries about aging. We have multiple of those put together, but they take several weeks to edit. So while they are being edited, I'm driving around in a van. I'm sure many of you are familiar with carpool karaoke, where you've got GoPro cameras set up. And that's really what I'm doing. It's just going around the country because of the other company that I started. I know, hundreds of providers, and they know that everything I'm going to do is going to, and we're not going to make fun of anybody. We're not, it's all about elevating aging. So I just travel the country literally from state to state, from city to city, and capture these stories. And Emily's just going to show a real quick snippet of some examples of people talking about being 100.
Go ahead, Emily.
The joy of being 100 years old.
I'll be 100 in November.
I'll be 100 in December.
I was 100 in March.
I don't feel like I'm 100.
I was 102 in March.
105.
So we launched that channel, and you can find it under the moniker of Vintage Voices 100 on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, whatever it may be. We have had, since we launched the channel in, I think it was in May or June, it's had 7.5 million views and tens of thousands of followers. And most of the people following are in the 35 to 60 age range. And I think, you don't really know, but my intuition is that a lot of folks in their 50s and 60s caring for their parents in their 80s and 90s are showing these clips to their parents and grandparents with the context of, Mom, this lady's 25 years older than you are, and look at her. So all you saw there was just a quick little snippet, but you'll see on the channel that we have just really kind of pearls of wisdom, that what they have to say. And then, like Carrie said, we also do a little longer 15, 20-minute kind of biographies that are really more for the family than anything else. But I just think that we're excited about the reception that it's had. And I just think that there's a thirst for joy, right? You know, I mean, there's so much stuff going on that's not joyful, you know, wherever you sit politically or whatever. And I think, you know, speaking to what you were talking about, the whole anti-ageism, I think this is an effective way to just show the positive side of what people are still able to do after hitting the century mark. So again, I can just kind of keep
Right,
going.
right.
Yeah.
So so how do you figure out what question to ask?
It's really, you know, there's something, it's really interesting how intimate these conversations get. And the things that I hear are extremely personal from the people. And I usually am traveling with at least one or two staff members from the community, and they'll hear, you know, sometimes the people I'm taking around have been at a community for 3, 5, 10 years, and the person that's known them for years and years has no idea of the things that the person is telling me. That's very much a core of who they are. And so I think that I think there's three reasons for that. One is, I think the fact that I'm a stranger, sometimes it's easier to tell a stranger things than maybe somebody that you're with every day. And the second thing is, I think it's just oddly comfortable talking while you're driving. You know, we're just having a conversation. The cameras are there, but you don't see the cameras. You don't, you know, you don't even think about it. You're just driving. I know with my own kids, I always have great conversations with them. Turn your phone off, turn everything off. Let's just have a conversation. That was harder to have sometimes when you're looking somebody face to face. And I think the last part of it is, I think people do, the elders pick up on my complete sincerity. I mean, I love what I'm doing. It's really, really relevant what they have to say. I'm a huge history buff. And so anybody obviously that's around 100 is going to have a connection to World War II. And that connection could be being in the war. The connection could be a Holocaust survivor. The connection could be, we interviewed somebody in Minnesota last month that was, he grew up in Germany, and he talks about being a kid having to sing every morning praise songs to Hitler for 30 minutes. So, you know, you think about these things, they almost feel like so long ago, black and white pictures in history books, and you're just sitting with these people that's their youth, that's their teenage years. I mean, it literally is just fascinating, the stories that we're hearing, and that's kind of where it comes. And so I think, to your question, Carrie, about the question, you just kind of let it go. It just kind of goes where it goes. And usually I kind of start off with what's somebody's first memory, and then it just takes off. And so I really enjoy, or I intentionally, I don't want to script anything, and I don't want the person to feel any apprehension. Like, sometimes people get questions, they overthink an answer as opposed to just speaking from their heart. So I really just try to avoid anything scripted and just kind of roll with it.
And even to give you an example, so my son Lynn, who you've all heard me talk about, was here earlier and met Jack. And Jack asked Lynn what he liked the most about where he lived. And then he said to him, okay, Lynn answered the question, and I don't want to answer it yet. And then he said to him, okay, what do you like the least about where you live? And it was, even to me, who is there 10 times a week with him, it was, his answer kind of surprised me, because it was the same answer. The people. That he loves the people that are there, but they're also the thing that annoys him the most days. And it was a very eye-opening experience to just watch his reaction that way, because I don't know that I've ever asked him that question. I'm there 10 times a week. Why would I? You know, so it really is that how he just brings people out, and people are drawn to wanting to hear these stories. Emily, you want to show more of what you have on the video?
Yeah,
Yes.
why don't you grab any of those clips, Emily, and I'll talk a little bit about whatever you show, and then later on
Sure.
can show another one.
But like when he first had access to a tractor,
because it was everything. I'm assuming everything was horses before that, as far as how you.
Yep.
So, what was the first? Do you remember the first tractor you bought?
Old Model 8 John Deere,
What year was that?
37.
1937.
Tractor that bought.
How much did it cost?
I think that paid $300 with a stop sign here.
Yeah.
So again, that's a Minnesota farmer. He was 102. Woman sitting right behind him was his 101-year-old wife. And so we're just driving. They're at a senior living community in the rural farmlands about 30 miles south of, or about 50 miles south of Minneapolis. And every one of these stories has kind of a unique twist. That particular story, that he did not want the ride to end. He wanted me to keep driving. He knew every single, we would drive by dozens of farmhouses, and he would tell us this, he'd make me stop, and he'd tell the story of every person that lived in that farmhouse. And it was, I mean, it was like, I felt like I was in the middle of a reality TV show of Minnesota farmers. But like that one lady, she was messing around places she shouldn't have with the guy there down the road there 3 to 6 miles. And all these different stories. And then at the end, and again, there's a real joy and a sadness to this with what I'm going to talk about, that about a month after we did that drive, that interview, his wife died. And so to be able to have captured this, wound up being about an hour drive where a lot of interaction between him and his wife, and his people just don't do it. I think subconsciously, part of why this whole thing is happening is that I worked for my father the last 2 years of high school and my first 2 years of college. Every summer I'd work for my dad. And so we would drive together about 40 minutes. This is in Southern California. We would drive 40 minutes one way, 40 minutes back. I never once asked him what he did in World War II. What was it like for a Nebraska farmer, 19 years old, to fly overseas to be the lead engineer on airstrips that he was building for something called the Burma Road in the Pacific Theater? And so I love the fact that every one of these drives, especially anybody talking about World War II, were able to capture these components to it. And then it's incredibly sad, but very understandable that a lot of people within months after the ride, they die. But it is so heartwarming for their families to have these stories captured. But man, I'm learning so many things. I mean, for many, many, many years, for this company called IN2L, now part of LifeLoop, I mean, I visited hundreds and hundreds of communities, but I never really interacted with the residents. And so most of what I've been doing, and this is not necessarily the plan going forward, but most of what I've been doing has been interviewing folks that live in senior living communities. So I'm really trying to, and most of the communities, frankly, have been pretty high end. So I really would like to be finding some folks in their hundreds, affordable housing, just really just across the whole economic line, that right now I've been a little bit more higher end than I necessarily would want to be. But there's a lot of stuff that, like I said, that I'm learning. There is such a thirst for the people to be heard. I mean, I intentionally don't schedule any visits in the afternoon, because usually the folks that I've driven around in the morning, they want me to come to their room. They want to show me the things they've been talking about. They oftentimes have really an intense sense of loneliness that, you read about it, you see statistics. It's really impacted me a lot over the last 6 or 7 months, just to see how people's lives that have lived incredibly full, rich lives have been kind of confined into a small area with not a lot of interaction oftentimes with other people. So one of my personal obsessions that I'm just trying to figure out how to kind of put together on a bigger scale, is trying to tie together both high school and college students with some of these folks that are lonely. I know there's been several programs that have been along those lines, that some have worked better than others, but I just think that there's such a logical fit between younger people who are maybe a little bit disillusioned and too connected to their cell phones, with these older adults who have so much to share and yet are not given the forum. I was at a community in San Diego 3 weeks ago, that it was a gentleman, I showed you this clip yesterday, Carrie, that it was a gentleman that got the Silver Star in World War II, and that's like the second highest medal you could get. He jumped out of a moving plane about 150 feet in the air to save the life of some British soldiers that had crashed. And so he's telling me this story. I go to his room afterwards. He shows me newspaper clips about it, all this stuff. And no one in the community knew that story. And their community is across the street from a high school, a high school that's obviously studying World War II. And here you have this absolute living treasure, so thirsty to be heard. And all it really takes is kind of a simple connection to, let's have you come speak to our students, or better yet, have the students come to the community, just to foster the interaction. So I don't know. Go ahead, Emily. I know you got 2 or 3 clips. You can show another one. Again, I'll just kind of speak to it as I see it. There's hundreds of them. No, I do. I've heard of Generations United. Do not work with them, but I'd love if anybody out there has any introductions to groups. I'm also going to be in New York, probably the latter part of the summer, early part of the fall. So if anybody has any good stories through Carrie, she can hook me up and we can talk about trying to make it happen.
So Michelle does. Michelle, tell Jack about your teacher. It's an interesting story for people.
Are we watching a video though? Sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Either way.
Okay, we'll get there. Either way, we'll get there.
Okay. Well, after the video,
He was
sure.
very forward because he put his arm around me in the theater, and I wasn't going to go out to this pervert again. So I was a real Boston girl.
Did you tell him to get it off, or did you lean into it?
I think I enjoyed it. I must have enjoyed it. I made another date.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell you, it has been fascinating to talk to both men and women about their relationships, their early relationships. I made one thing I learned early on, and Emily, we'll get to you in a second after I finish the story, that I always assume when people get in the car, I always assume that it's staff from the community. And so we get in the ride. This was in Boston, and we're driving around with this lady who was so funny, and her husband of 60 or 70 years had just died recently. And so I started asking her questions about that. What he must have been your first love. What was that like? And she's like, well, I was turning 21, or I was 21, almost turning 22. And I just felt like I had to get married. And this guy was there, super nice guy. I wouldn't really say that it was this big love relationship, but it was a great relationship. We got along well for years and years, was a great father, no regrets, blah, blah, blah. But who I really loved was this French guy from high school. And I never knew what happened to him, but he was always in the back of my mind of what could have been. And so I'm just like, this is like good theater. So I'm just like digging into this whole love story with the French guy. And then we get out of the car, and the people get out of the car, and one of the women was her daughter-in-law. So I unintentionally completely ruined her entire, she was 80, and I completely ruined this whole fantasy she had of what her parents' marriage was like. So I learned quickly on to be a little more diligent about what's in the car. But is the stuff you hear about first dates and how people met in the church and met in the synagogue, and there's such a romanticism to it, and there's such a, I don't know, it's just, it's so, let's just say that there's not a lot of stories about Tinder when I ask these folks about what's going on. So go ahead, Emily. What you, I guess, I think you had I love other people talking. So
Michelle was gonna.
oh, is it Michelle? Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to tell you about her teacher.
Well, before I share my story, so I'm curious about your whole approach. How do you approach the facilities? How does
You
that
know, it's just
work?
because of it's never too late. Uh, people are the issue I have is I've got too many people who want me to come. I mean, it really, I think people, everybody, I mean, I've known so many senior living communities because of my company. And I think everybody knows who knows me knows that I'm not going to do anything to embarrass a person. I'm not going to do anything that's condescending. I'm just going to try to bring out the best in that person and then highlight it. So people want to have their residents shown on the channel. So it really is more of, can you come here? And I'm just trying to manage it logistically. And luckily, I don't know if this kind of speaks to me probably more than anything else. I live in Colorado. Last year, I was in the state of Colorado less than 3 weeks. I am on the road nonstop doing this stuff. And when I was a little kid, I loved road trips. I am totally, people sometimes will say things to me kind of like, wow, it's the work you're doing is so meaningful. You're making it sound like I'm, digging wells in Cameroon. I mean, there's nothing I would rather be doing than what I'm doing. And what I do is, it's kind of funny. What I do is I have these weeks where whether it's through the documentaries or through Vintage Voices, the 100-year-olds, I'm constantly talking. I just go from state to state. Every weekend, I'll wait till the last minute, find an Airbnb between point A and point B, and I don't talk to anybody for like 2.5 days. I play bad guitar and I hit plastic golf balls in the back of these places. Just when I talk to men my age, and I look at the screen, some of you are the same thing. Like 2/3 of the men I talk to think I'm crazy, and the other third are like, I'd give anything to have your life. So I'm loving this and living it, and so no one should ever pat me on the head for the work that I do, because I honestly, I just feel like my life is just a nonstop vacation. So that, again, so to answer your question, it's really not been difficult for me. But I do, like I said, though, I really want to be proactive in finding some lower income folks. I'm going to be traveling to a Native American reservation in Nebraska. I'm fascinated to interview some 100-year-old Native Americans. So again, if there's, I don't want to overcommit to things, but if there are some interesting stories within any of your own networks, just reach out through Carrie or Gray Panthers. And if there's any way we have sponsors, so it doesn't cost anything. If some of the communities, if we do multiple stops, we'll charge for that. But we're trying to do this that it's not costing anybody anything. Okay. The person that Hannah asked me, how old are you? Just curious. I want you to answer. Give me a guess, Hannah. Give me a guess on the chat, and then I'll tell you and you don't say what I want to hear. Say what you think.
Oh, no, 65.
65, right on the frickin' money, Hannah. You're awesome. That's what I am. 65, acting like I'm 19.
Great. I do have, would you like another video, Michelle, or did you want to
Sure,
ask
that's
another
fine.
question?
Oh no, is the only who to Karina, if I'm pronouncing that right. The only question we have is, or the only issue we have is, can somebody get into the van that as far as a that 107-year-old. So I love, again, I'm going to be in that whole kind of northeast, kind of the corridor, Pennsylvania, Ohio, in late summer, early fall. So we've had 100, the lady you're looking at right there, that picture, she's 106. So 107 would be our oldest so far.
Pretty Boy Floyd, have you ever heard of him? Oh, he was a bank robber. Pretty Boy Floyd told this guy who was a member, who was his main man, not to do it, but he decided to rob Bowling Bank anyway. And when he got the money, and Mr. McCormick, who had worked for my father, shot him.
Shot Pretty Boy Floyd?
No, it was Pretty Boy Floyd's next in hand.
Wow.
And there was a book about that. Pretty Boy Floyd, have you ever heard?
So that lady is 106. She lives in an Erickson community in Maryland. She was the first Black professor at the University of North Carolina in 1962. And it was just fascinating hearing what that was like for her as a young woman to walk into the middle of the South. And she said she had nothing but good things to say about how she was treated by the university and by the students. So it is, I mean, every day it's just kind of a walk down history lane for some of these people, and you never know. It's any kind of stereotype. I don't, has been shattered because some people suffered a lot of prejudice, some people didn't. Some people are bitter, some people are joyful. I mean, it's just the gamut of humanity. I don't know if I answered this before about Generations United, but I want to know more. Yeah, I want to know more about them. So if somebody knows, that's great.
That's easy. Ron's on my board with me.
Okay, all right.
I'll connect you.
So we love it when we like the most views we had, and this had like 1.5 million views. Is we went through a McDonald's and we asked for a free ice cream for the lady that was 100 years old. She 101, and they wouldn't give it to her. And so our social media partner, it's a company called Dash Media, Nathan Jones, he put as the headline, McDonald's refuses ice cream for 100-year-old. And it got so many views. And it was my first experience of something going viral. And like 80% of the comments were ripping McDonald's, and the other 20% were just ripping me. You cheap bastard! Why don't you buy the lady an ice cream? And so I was starting to respond to them, just like, hey, I bought her the ice cream. And then I go, you know what? I'm not going to win here. But it was. What was really interesting, and this is a super sad commentary about social media, is we had the exact opposite thing happen at a Dunkin' Donuts and at a Wendy's. And that was where the workers were, when she pulled up, they gave her free stuff, they started singing. Those clips have had like 1,000th the views of the one that was negative. And so from a viewer standpoint, it's like, well, let me just go do more negative things. But I didn't want to do it because I didn't realize this clip would blow up, but I unintentionally made the woman look bad who didn't give her the ice cream. And all she was trying to do was her job. She just didn't, probably a minimum wage worker, didn't want to make a mistake. And so I don't want to do anything for the sake of chasing views. And I just like doing things that are more positive anyway. But last week we drove by we went to the high school, or about a month ago, we went to the high school where the woman went to high school in the early 40s, and a bunch of students came out, and they asked the greatest questions of her, really, really insightful questions. And that's part of what has really got me fired up about trying to do some kind of generational connections through all of this.
So I have both.
Yeah,
I have both of those clips. I have the McDonald's clip and the Dunkin' Donuts clip. If you want to do those.
Emily is on. Yeah, go ahead, show the McDonald's clip. It's pretty funny.
One of the participants is 100.
Is 108.
100 years old. She got a free tea for her birthday.
What about an ice cream cone?
Oh.
I'm gonna ask my manager. Hold on, let me ask my manager.
That's right. Once we get him talking to the manager, then we're making.
Sir, we don't do that.
Oh, you don't do 100? I can't. Not even a free ice cream?
Not at all.
Oh, jeez. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Let me. I'll see that manager. And there's a 100-year-old lady doesn't get a free ice cream for her birthday?
No, sir. I'm not the supervisor. I'm one of the managers. There's nothing. We don't usually do that. We don't do that here.
Okay. Well, I'll buy her. I'll buy her. Can I buy her an ice cream?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm gonna send a letter to McDonald's social media looking for a refund.
Yeah, if nobody had the money to buy it, I could pay for it. But
You know what? I am honored.
21.
No, she's on the van. I go all over the country, going to like places like Burger King and Taco Bell. They always give us free stuff, but I guess not McDonald's. That's too bad.
tell them we ain't gonna come back here no more. They get nothing.
Okay, the 100-year-old has spoken.
Poor Ms. Evelyn, 100 years old. They wouldn't give her a free ice cream on her birthday, and I know that Mr. McDonald's is going to make this right. Do you have any special? Ms. McClinton is the first. But her story, you know, I mean, I get such joy out of seeing these things because the story comes back to life. Her story was she was married when she was 14, and her husband they just took off. They took off from in the Carolinas and she had 3 kids by the time she was 20, and her father was a bootlegger, and they had a hole in the roof of their house that was just big enough for her to fit through. And so when the people would come over to get their moonshine, as a, you know, an 8-year-old girl, she'd climb up to the roof to get it out and bring it back down so they keep it hidden. And so, I mean, again, these stories are just fascinating of Americana. So what time-wise, what's going on? I don't want to be...
Yeah, we're good. We're 22 minutes.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you all one you probably don't know. So Sam's Club will give you a free full-size sheet cake for anybody that's 100 or over.
Oh, I got to do that.
So I have a friend whose aunt is like 106, 107, and she has went and got her aunt a cake every year since she turned 100 to go get the free cake every year. And
so great couple of questions that I'll answer here. First of all, what common themes or life lessons? You know, it really it's been interesting because there's no consistency to diet. There's no consistency to exercise. You'll get somebody who stretches every night, somebody else who just sits. You'll get somebody who, I have never had a cocktail, somebody else who has a 5 o'clock Manhattan since they were 24. But the two things that have really, I'd say 2 7/8 things that have been consistent. The 7/8 has been a real strong faith. There has been some people that have almost rejected faith, but most, 9 out of 10 folks very much bring up whatever denomination, whatever it may be, a very, very strong faith. The 2 things that have been completely consistent have been curiosity, people still asking questions, people still wanting to learn something, people asking about me, like, where am I going to go from here? What's the, just generally inquisitive people. And the second thing has been a really fierce independence. They do not want help in the van. They do not want help, even if they 100% need it. But they don't, and I think it's an interesting lesson. I'm speaking a lot from the lesson. I'm speaking publicly a lot about some of the lessons I've learned. And I think that you can be so, with the best of intentions, you can be so concerned about doing everything for somebody that you really do strip away their independence. And there's a great clip, it's not out there, Emily, you won't be able to grab it, but of a woman that's 101, and she talked about the minute people found out she was 80, how patronizing they became to her. They wanted to help her across the street. They wanted to, and she did not want that. She stopped telling people her age because of that. So I think there's without really knowing the Gray Panthers, other than like the cool things a little bit here and there, I think there's a lot of relevance to what I've learned, relative to what, to what you guys are all about from an independent standpoint. But it really, it's been interesting to see that. The other question about life lessons, I guess that kind of ties into what I just said. I think that um, again, just an ability to just having an environment where you can keep learning, I think is super important, regardless of what happens to people's physical, just what happens to them just naturally through the course of aging.
So what's the most unusual story you've heard from somebody?
Can I get a little inappropriate here?
Sure.
Okay. The funny, well, I don't know how to describe it, but a guy, like I said before, I love to get into the relationships people have had. It's fascinating to me that some of these things people have lived through. So this 101-year-old guy in Rhode Island, he was in Providence. He was telling me about his wife dying when he was 75. And so I went through the appropriate level of that must have been hard. How did you deal with that? All that kind of stuff. And he's like, well, luckily, about 6 months after she died, I met this short redhead, and she was a sexual dynamo. It's like, yeah, let's go. So there's a lot of that. I think that the story of a gentleman from New Jersey that talked about being in the Battle of the Bulge in World War II, which those of you who may or may not know, it was really the final turning point of the war when Germany kind of threw everything they had. And when they ultimately lost, that was really kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for the Allies winning the war. But this guy talked about, and he had wanted to be a journalist, and they at this stage of the war they made him become a soldier the last year, to his chagrin. And he talks about being in the battlefield of the Battle of the Bulge with a bazooka, like one of the first early bazookas that they had. And he's just feeling so, you hear all these heroic stories. He was terrified. He hated being, he just was so, he believed in the cause, but he just felt so out of place. And he got shot in the leg simultaneously to his colleague being shot in the eye. And so the two of them together wrapped their arms around each other. The way he described it, he was the eyes and the other guys was the legs, and they were able to hop away to safety. And so you hear stories like that, and it's just astounding what that generation lived through and how many people we talk to. This is kind of a whole other life lesson thing. I think more than half, probably more like 75% of the people that we talk to grew up with no power, with outhouses outside. They had nothing that we would consider modern amenities. And not one person, it's funny, as I think this is something I should add to my consistent themes. Not one person complains about it. That was just what life was. And you just figured it out and you just learned to deal with it. And there was an incredible amount of self-reliance in that whole generation and humility that stays with them. Most of them do not think, especially the war guys, they don't think their stories are that interesting, but they are fascinating. And it's, again, it's really just an honor to kind of bring that all to life.
Anyone have any questions for Jack?
So Jack, did you take any special training in dealing with older people? Did you have any moments that you were with a difficult person, or here you are trapped in a car?
Well, I think usually one of my first lines to the women is, "When's the last time you're in a van with a man?" And I get pretty good answers to that question. And I've never had any training. I just think it's very. You just ask it. I mean, to me, I don't know. I think whatever we do well, we just think it's no big deal. I think I really do this well. I never thought I was a very good CEO of the company I was a CEO for. Most of what I've done in my life, I think I've been way underqualified for, but I'm really good at kind of faking it. but I'm very sincere in the questions, and I'm so interested in what they have to say that it never has felt like it's hard. But I have had a lot of people say that I just made them very comfortable to get a lot more open than they thought they would. I think that you can tell very quickly if you're tiptoeing into a realm of what somebody doesn't want to talk about, and you just back away from it. I mean, and I think anybody that's willing to get into the van, by definition, has kind of opened themselves up to it, and so that really hasn't been an issue. And I think this is also heartbreaking and heartwarming simultaneously. It used to be more heartwarming for me. Now it's more heartbreaking that I've had probably 30 to 40 people tell me that this 1 hour drive or 40-minute drive is the most meaningful thing that they've had happen in the last year. And that's at first like, oh, that's cool. And then it's like, it's really sad. And it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with driving in a van. It's the fact that somebody took the time to just really give a shit about what this person's life was about. And I apologize for that, but that really is, it's really what it is. And I just think that doesn't take a van, or it just takes intentionalism. And it's part of why that high school thing stuck with me, because these kids, and I have no research on this, it's just a random circumstance that happened. These kids walked up to this woman with incredibly interesting questions. And why shouldn't that be happening thousands and thousands and thousands times in society right now? So again, like I said, that's a passion of mine, trying to figure out.
Any of you that know teachers suggested, one of the conversations that was this morning with our Einstein option meeting this morning, somebody's suggestion of everyone was giving this big amazing goal they would love to see. And Isaac Longobardi from Moving Forward Coalition, his big audacious goal was that he wanted to see that junior high and high school kids were required 100 hours between junior high and graduation of high school of volunteering and getting to know seniors, whether it was in a residential community or at a community center, but require some time. Next month we also have somebody coming in that taught a class, and still is, that's teaching a class in Canada about how she teaches this class. It is half students and half residents of an assisted living, and the relationships that have been built from this. A lot of you probably saw when Tone was on our webinar over a year ago about his experience from living in an assisted living in Holland for almost a year, or 3 years. I mean, so this is all so important. Like Emily just put in the chat, or Michelle, we have launched with Girl Scouts of New York a Great Panthers Youth in Action Girl Scout patch, and we're going to try to get that in other states, and then we're going to go to Scouting of America, which is what Boy Scouts of America used to be.
Right, so Jack, maybe we can be partnering with you and the Girl Scouts to do this intergenerational effort.
Yeah, no, because you want to do what I love about the Girl Scouts component is you love to do things at a small scale that you do very well that could be scalable, and that's clearly what something like that could be. So 100%, let's talk about that. So somebody asked a question of a first memory. The guy, the question, I don't know, somebody mentioned in the chat, it's, can you give an example of someone's first memory? The guy that I was telling you about, the German guy, that I interviewed just a month ago, his first memory is he's 5 years old and that they were constantly getting bombed. And he didn't know if it was, he just didn't understand it. All he knew that he just had to run with his, with his father holding him, run into this thing that was a shelter with all these other families. And he had no concept of what it was. And so a lot of times there's things like that. There was one where a woman just talked, she grew up in Norway and just talked about being in a visceral memory of being in a, I mean, I have got some of these stories, I won't go on and on, but it really, it's really interesting how people, you know, that are 100 are bringing up things that are like 98 years ago. Really, really interesting.
Well, just Carrie did ask me to mention this, and I am a student of a teacher who's 102, and she is not going to retire
Yeah.
ever. So she has 40 students. I was just with her yesterday. She she is never talking about the past. She talks about the future. We're always planning our next art show. We are always thinking about what we need to do for next year. The woman is amazing. She charges and she accepts payment only on Zelle. She takes Venmo. When she wants to tell me something and she can't express herself in English, she uses her iPhone, which translates. She uses technology all the time.
Yeah, last year
She's
I was at, or about a year and a half ago, I was at used to be called Hebrew Home in your guys' neck of the woods. That's now, I think it's River Spring now. And Dr. Ruth was there, and I was able to meet Dr. Ruth, and she was telling me about, you've got to see my new what's coming out on Hulu. Kind of that same thing. It's like one thing I've learned, you know, my own language is I never use the past tense anymore. Somebody was a teacher. That person's a teacher. They may be retired, but they're a teacher. That person was a soldier. You know, it's interesting how you just your language can kind of just unintentionally, with obviously you're all doing a lot more work on ageism than I do, but it's just you kind of do see how you by words do make a difference in that kind of context.
But, you know, we also have to remember when, especially when talking about ageism, that it's not just our elders. You know, there's a group that we have helped foster of younger adults that have faced a lot of ageism too. Of, oh, well, you're not old enough for this job. You don't have enough experience because you're only 25. We've got to take age out of the conversation. You know, it should be based on qualifications. It should be based on education. It should be based on life, not somebody's number, because your number means nothing in the end. And I think that's part of the ageism that we miss in that conversation and need to have more of. Does anybody have any more questions for Jack?
Well, we're all looking forward to getting invited to the van at some point, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, working our way to the van. Right. Well, like I said,
Yeah. Right. You should invite people of all ages, don't you think? Otherwise, it's ageist.
Yeah, no, we take people around all the time, but we are if you look at the website, it says 100 years or close. So anybody can define what that means. But I'm going to be out there, like I said, you know, in several months. I mean, I'd love to be. I don't know if you ever have any events or things to be a part of. I have a lot of good friends in New York. The River Spring, you know, several of the senior living communities. So I'll work with Karen to try to choreograph something. But it would be nice to meet. I'm assuming people are from all over the place. Yeah. But why don't you throw my email address in there? And if anybody wants to email me about either questions or a trip.
Yeah, you've got it, Emily, don't you?
What is it?
Jack's email.
It's jyork@tailgateforjoy.com. TALE.
I'm sorry. J York at what?
Tailgate, TALEGATE, the number 4joy.com.
I have it, Michelle.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And we weren't trying to be clever. We tried to get the tailgate domain misspelled tailgate, and somebody was trying to charge us $500,000 for it. Give me a break. So that's why we did.
We've had somebody try to.
Yeah,
we actually have somebody who bought ours, but that's okay. We have the one we use and it works just fine. And that is something we probably should tell people. So we were real excited a week or two ago. So according to Google, we had 900 people search for us in like a 30-day period, which for us was huge. You know, our numbers are growing very fast, and that's because of all of you joining us, sending people to us. And we appreciate that. Because the more people that know about Gray Panthers New York, the more people that know about all of our chapters, the more we can all do for each other.
We actually had 1,500 unique visitors in the last 30 days.
Right.
All right.
Which is really a big, big deal. And we're proud of the work we're doing. If somebody has suggestions, webinars for us, let us know. Right now, we're booking about 6 months out because somehow we're a little busy. But we're always happy to talk to people about new ideas too.
So in March, we'll meet again on March 25th. We're going to have a Canadian professor tell us about her intergenerational class. And then in April, we have a group called Emerging Aging. Those are young professionals in the geriatric space, are going to talk about career opportunities. And then in May, we have Diane Hessen, who wrote a book called A Common Ground, which is about bringing together left and right in our country and trying to communicate with each other. So that's our upcoming calendar. We look forward to seeing everybody again on March 25th. Please visit our website and remember that we have this new initiative with the Girl Scouts, and we're going to try to take it throughout the country. Right now, it's just in New York City. Age and Youth in Action. And I also offered people the calls to action. If you'd like to call your congressman, those numbers are there to let them know that we don't want Medicaid or Medicare to be cut. So thanks, everybody. Thank you, Jack York. Thank you, Carrie, for setting this up. And look forward to seeing everybody next month.
Yes.
All right. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.